Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the July 5th, 2022 Albany County Commissioners regular meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Commissioner Albert. Here. Commissioner Richardson, not yet here. Commissioner Gosar is here. Would you stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And just to let you guys know, there are microphones in the ceiling, so your side conversations will be heard by those people online. So just to let you know, they're pretty good mics. So item number 3, public hearing. I'd like to open up the public hearing for the Cottontail subdivision final plat application SD 11-21. Anybody in the room like to speak on behalf of the Cottontail subdivision final plat application SD 11-21? On or against, please? Okay. Anybody online on or against the Cottontail subdivision final plat application SD 11-21? Last call for in-person and online. Should I take a motion to close the public comment for the Cottontail subdivision?
I move that we close the public hearing for the Cottontail subdivision.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. I'd like to open up the public hearing for the Spotted Horse South subdivision preliminary and final plat application SD-04-22. Anybody on or against the Spotted Horse subdivision preliminary and final plat in the room? How about online? And last call for online or in the room. I'd entertain a motion to close that public hearing, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And the final public hearing this morning, the Fortman subdivision preliminary and final plat application SD-05-22. Anybody on or against the Fortman subdivision? How about on or against online? And last call online and in person. Commissioners, one last time, I'd entertain a motion for the Fortman subdivision.
I move that we close the Fortman subdivision.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item 4, comments from the public. Is there anybody who would like to make a public comment? You can stand to the lectern if you would, or raise your hand or unmute yourself online if you'd like. How about last call for the public comments? You guys are letting us off easy today. I'd entertain a motion to close the public comment, please.
I move we close the public comment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item 5, disclosures. Commissioner Ibarra.
I have none.
Commissioner Richardson.
I have none.
And I have none also. Item 6, considerations of changes on the agenda. Jennifer, please.
Good morning, commissioners. I would like to request that we remove items 16 and 17. We need some more information for both of those that we would have ready by today and be done. So if we could remove both of those today, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Item 16 and 17, Jackie or Kayla. Item 7, approval of the consent agenda. Commissioners, as is, or would you like to remove stuff, pull stuff out? How would you like to? I can take a motion for the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item 8 moves us to the regular agenda. Present for approval, resolution 2022-014 to place the continuation of a 2% lodging tax on the general election ballot to be held Albany County, Wyoming on Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. I see Scott's online and Jennifer also. Scott, the floor is yours if you can hear us.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
I'm clear. Thank you, Scott.
Good. I don't have anything specific for you all this morning, and I guess first things first, I should apologize that I'm not able to attend this morning in person, which was my plan. My wife and I unfortunately both tested positive for COVID over the weekend, so we are locked down at home this morning. But wanted to take any questions from anyone with regards to the lodging tax. This is my first time through this process. I've been here for 3.5, little over 3 years, I guess now. So this is my first time through this process, but happy to take any questions from anybody. I don't have anything formally prepared to present to you guys, but I'm open to any questions from the commissioners as well as anyone else in attendance.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Scott. Commissioners, any questions for Scott?
I guess I just have one looking at the resolution, Scott. In 2014, it was a lodging tax of 4%, and now it's 2%. Can you explain that to me?
Sure. Without making things too complicated, a couple of years ago, the state approved a statewide lodging tax, which is 5%. And so essentially the way that 5% works, 3% goes back to the State Office of Tourism, and 2% effectively remains permanent at the local level until overturned, if ever overturned in the future. So in the past, we've had to ask for 1, 2, 3, or 4%, whereas now we have 2% that's guaranteed through that 5%, if that makes sense. And we can only ask for 1 or 2, cannot exceed 4%. Which is why we've changed it to 2% instead of 4%, because we have that 2% from the state that's been formally approved permanently. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Scott.
Sure.
Any other questions? Well, Scott, I'm so sorry to hear about that. It's nothing worse to be trapped in your house at a beautiful July morning. But commissioners, I'd entertain a motion for item 8, please.
I move that we approve item 8 as presented.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Scott. I hope you feel well, or if you're not feeling poorly now, I hope you continue not to feel poorly. So.
Thank you. I appreciate your time this morning.
You bet. Thank you. Item 9, present for approval corrections to the employee handbook to include clarification of separation pay, bereavement leave, termination, resignation and discharge, use of sick leave, annual vacation accrual, and vacation leave / separation, and retirement severance. Christina, good morning. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So as you had asked, you should have the new handbook in front of you. That is the one that doesn't have any strike-throughs or any further corrections. So it is the final draft. There's not a lot of changes from the last time I presented till now, but there are a few things that you asked me to go over. So I'll touch on those briefly. One is we made some verbiage changes to the vacation accrual. We had a lot of questions about those folks that were between 200 and 240 hours, and if they were going to lose hours. The answer was no. We reworded it so that it reflects that. You also asked for me to give you a figure regarding the possible retirement severance package if employees elected to use that. And so there was a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet that should have been attached to your packet that went over those numbers. The policy itself didn't change, but we have 12 possibilities that could be eligible based on that new retirement package that we wrote. Out of those 12, 2 of them will meet the rule of 85 between now and the end of the year. And then the remaining have either been here less than 10 years of service or more than 10 years of service. And the spreadsheet on the far right broke down the potential payout for each one of those individuals if they elected to use that package. And so the total, if all 12 took the severance, the total amount would be $315,000. Now, I don't suspect that all 12 will, but you asked me what the possibilities were for the next fiscal year, and so that's kind of what we're looking at. Out of the 12, there are three possibilities that I'm aware of, people that have come forward and asked about retirement of those 12. But did you guys get that spreadsheet? We're able to take a look at that?
It wasn't included.
Okay, let me pass that around so you guys can take a look at it.
I'm sorry, I didn't put it in the packet. I didn't know if
That's
with
okay.
having employees'
Names on
names,
it. Yeah, that's
I
fine.
did not.
Sorry, I didn't.
But I
realize
think
that they
you
weren't-
emailed it prior to though. to
I did.
commissioners.
I've never
No,
seen
I
it.
didn't.
Oh.
I sent it to you as in the packet. So I apologize that you guys didn't get to see it. I thought it was in the packet. But it makes sense because it does have employee names on it. So
I apologize. I should.
No, that's okay.
Sorry.
So you guys can take a look at that. And then the other thing that I think that was it actually that you asked me about was the retirement package. And then the final draft for the handbook.
Okay, thanks, Christina. Any questions, commissioners?
I move that we approve item 9 as presented.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Christina, for the overall number. That is really helpful
I
for
apologize.
budgeting and allowing us to figure out what that would do to salary, reserve, or captive. Everybody decided to go.
Sure. I apologize you didn't have it ahead of time. I thought that you did. The one question that I want to get clarification, if you don't mind, in regards to the retirement, if we have someone that wants and elects that package, are we paying it out of the salary fund line item? Then is that where that's coming from? My understanding?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Item 10, present for consideration Cottontail subdivision final plat application SD-11-21 and a subdivision permit. David, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, James Osborne has applied for a subdivision permit for Cottontail subdivision. This is a final plat and subdivision permit request. It's a 4-lot subdivision. This is out at 7 Mile. You should remember seeing the preliminary plat coming through. We had a number of folks review this. None of them had anything too crazy. Luke Hawkins, chairman, said that a hydrant will not be required, but the best practice would be to add a hydrant at that property. He also recommends a hot water program if they didn't do the hydrant. This application will, or this proposal will be served by this 7 Mile water district who will provide the water out there. Individual wastewater systems will be required. The storm drainage report was completed for this proposal, reviewed by Bill Gorman. Utilities can be provided in this area, postal service, roads. There will be improvements to Cottontail Drive, which already exists. Road improvements. Covenants with a road maintenance plan have been provided. Filed with the final plat. And financial assurance provided for this property. Fire protection, again, fire protection is provided by the Albany County Fire District #1. The notice has been provided. Findings of fact, the summary of the subdivision permit requirements, applicant responses, and staff analysis of inclusion of information as reference in this report are affirmatively adopted as findings that the applicant has provided the board with adequate information, that the requested and required findings, documentation, notice, and notations have been satisfied by the applicant and are saved and incorporated here. The conclusions of the law, the applicant is proceeding in accordance with and compliance with the requirements of the Albany County Plat and subdivision regulations. So this is in an existing, just analysis, existing developed area. They have access to water, which is always available in other parts of the county. And at the February 1st, 2022 meeting, the Board of County Commissioners approved the variance request from the road standards to be able to have a right of way. Staff recommended approval of this application. Planning and zoning had a discussion. Most of the discussion was based on the DEQ application for the Chapter 23 report, as well as the review by DEQ itself. And one of the commissioners found that the application that was submitted wasn't technically accurate. And that obviously if it wasn't accurate, then there should have been some changes, I guess, at the DEQ level. So that was kind of the discussion there. The vote was 4-1 to recommend the Board of County Commissioners approval of the Cottontail subdivision final plat application and subdivision permit adopting and incorporating findings, the staff analysis findings of fact and conclusions of the law stated in the staff report, with the condition of working with the fire district to add a new hydrant to the area. And then the only dissenting vote was Commissioner Hinckley. And the reason he voted against it was the inadequacy of the Chapter 23 application and review. So any questions from commissioners? Any questions, David?
Yeah, David, those inaccuracies from the DEQ, were they addressed as far as, was it returned to DEQ for explanation?
So what we did was we sent them the information. Actually, the chairman, Mr. Hinckley, sent an email with explaining what the issues were and why they weren't addressed. And DEQ responded and said they thought it was okay. So that was the only correspondence. There wasn't any additional information that came from that correspondence. But we did send that back and try to get some more information on what happened.
And each one of those points that Commissioner Hinckley pointed out, were they answered or just said we found, the whole report was we found is acceptable?
Let me see if that is in the packet here. Sorry, that's not something that I reviewed before the meeting. This is actually Joe's project.
And I don't remember seeing that.
Yeah, it may not have been. I do remember the response, and it was like, well, we stick by. We thought that the area out there, the water is not good already. So you wouldn't use it for potable water. And I think that's why there's a water district out there to provide the water. But yeah, I don't believe that was totally addressed. Honestly, I don't know if I can answer that question.
You don't have to bother looking. I looked it over as well as the packet you sent us individually, and I didn't see any response to that.
Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner McGrath?
No, thank you.
Commissioner, any questions? David, I just kind of want to know our process with like a recommended hydrant for the hall water program. If the applicant chooses neither, what impact does that have on the subdivision or the plat for people that might buy lots out there? Do they know that there is not any water available to fight fires? Or tell me a little bit about that, please.
So planning and zoning is asking for a hydrant. So
right.
If we approve it, they will have to install a hydrant as part of their application. Now, if we chose not to go that route, then we would require them to do the hauled water program with fire district number 1. And what that means is they pay into that, set amount of money based on the number of lots. And then the district uses that to buy tankers and all those different types of fire apparatuses so that they can fill up their fleet of those to do that type of fire suppression. And honestly, the other option would be to put in a cistern, but we don't recommend those right now, and the fire district doesn't recommend those. And, most folks go with the hauled water program.
Okay, is the applicant expressed an interest one way or the other, the hauled water or the hydrant?
I haven't heard any response to the recommendation from doing the fire hydrant. I know that they're willing to work with them. I think Jake is on, he actually represents the applicant. He may be able to ask that or answer that better than I could.
Jake, good morning. Thank you. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. I actually was not aware of that that recommendation. I would have to actually evaluate the water system out there. It kind of would concern me that we would not have available flow through a fire hydrant to meet fire hydrant demand, because I think there's only a 6-inch line that supplies that water, and if a fire truck was to come up, hook up to it, and try to draw more water than that pipe could provide, we could potentially cause damage to that existing pipe. And so I would say if we hydraulically, if we could make that work, we would have no problem putting a hydrant in. It would just be a matter of evaluating the existing water system to make sure it could handle that additional hydrant.
With that,
I may be able to shed
so
some
okay,
light.
please.
Also, within Fire District 1, a subdivision doesn't have the option to not choose fire suppression. You just have the option to choose what type. And it has a lot to do with maybe even geography, and what you're in, and how far water is from there. So it's good that there's a menu of options because it helps people make the best one for the location and maybe the distance from the firehouse and so on. The fact that there's a water district right there is why the fire hydrant is being considered. If you know, 3 miles south or 3 miles north, then you would probably definitely choose the hauled water program, or maybe even a 1/4 mile, you know, because it's too far to string out hose. So one way or the other, they have to pay to do the fire stuff. The reason that we used to require cisterns, except cisterns don't get maintained properly and they get mucky inside, or somebody puts a lock on there, and it's harder for the fire district can respond faster. Nobody's going to pump the water cistern out of there with a pump truck, and the pump truck shows up full. So, you know, and they can feed their pumper with trucked water faster than they could fool with the cistern with water sitting there and with a limited supply. So the hauled water program is preferable, and it works really well. And the response times, like it's shorter and faster and better in all respects than a cistern, but definitely not better than a fire hydrant. So the question, usually out in the county, there isn't an option to consider a fire hydrant because there just aren't that many water districts all around, all over the place. It just so happens that this particular subdivision is in a place where that can be considered. So it's, in my opinion, it's probably not appropriate for us to require one or the other, you know, to make the choice for them, because they're already faced with that. You know, they can't not choose either one. They have to choose one or the other. And so from I think we should approve the subdivision without going that far into the weeds. Either the system, that fire hydrant, can support the flows that they would need, and that would probably be the least expensive option. I don't remember what the fee is for, but I don't have to know. I mean, I guess the point is that they have to choose one or the other based on all of the inputs, you know, that their engineer, you know, just all of that stuff. And I would guess actually that that the fire district might, either way they get both. It's just a question on the development side what they pay for it, because they're not going to run all the way back to the firehouse to fill trucks. They'll probably go over to the nearest hydrant. It just won't be right. It'll be in 7 Mile, and they might have to fill their trucks at half speed or something. You know, in fire, you figure out a way to do that always, because that's sometimes they're pulling out of a creek or who knows what, right? So in the moment, they decide whether where they can get the nearest water the fastest. I think that if I were doing this development, I would choose to put a hydrant in over hauling water if I could. Question is, but if we said you have to put in a hydrant, our regulations don't provide for that. It's just one of the options, but we can't say you have to. And also that if we say you have to, then maybe that would require them to totally rebuild 7 miles, water system, which is not possible. So there are consequences to these things that so while might be curious, I think that that's just a decision that the developer makes, but they don't have the option to choose nothing. They have to choose one or the other based on all of the inputs, to make it work.
Yeah, I don't necessarily feel like I want to dictate any policy, except I do know we have a subdivision where the hauled water program is very difficult based on the design of the roads. In fact, we had the fire district come to us and say, it's dangerous to haul water to this because we have blind corners, we have high rises on roads that we can't see. And so for me, this is probably not an issue out there. I'm familiar, there's not big hills out there or whatever, but I think this is a question that we need to continue to ask, because if it is a fire hydrant, great, right? But if it's not, I think people need to be assured when they buy into that subdivision, and the first responders need to be assured that the roads are built such that they can haul the water there safely. And so I don't care however they do that, whatever way they want to go, but we need to ensure that the roads are in compliance, and this is probably not an issue with that, but there is a subdivision, we all know it, where hauled water is really dangerous. And I'd hate to have us not think about that in the future, about when we go to fire suppression in subdivisions.
Well, interestingly, that subdivision isn't relevant to this discussion, and it's also was put in before the hauled water program was. So, the order of development and the rules at the time sort of affect the outcomes. It's hard to go back, but for our current regulations and the location of this subdivision, I don't think there's any issue with what the developer chooses. It won't be an issue.
Yeah, David, please.
I was just gonna say that, that our regulations are in place to require that something happens. And we put the burden really on the fire district to determine how that happens. And so that's why we get their kind of review of information back. So yeah, I agree with both of you guys. We want to make sure these are done right, and I think that's where the discussion has to take place between the developer and the fire district, and they need to decide what they're going to do, and then we need to make sure it gets done. Yes.
Right. I think we could be helpful to a volunteer fire district to be the experts to help them. I can't imagine if I was a volunteer fire department, I might not know a whole bunch about roads. And that might be useful to have you guys who do know about roads, or know about roads, have that conversation with them. And that's all I care about.
Sure.
I don't care to dictate anybody's policy about what they want to choose. Choose what they want. So, commissioners, any other questions? I entertain a motion for item 10 then, please.
I move that we approve Cottontail subdivision final plat application SD 1121, and a subdivision permit incorporating the findings of fact and conclusions of laws outlined in the staff report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion, Jake, or anybody who represents the Osbornes? Okay. Seeing all, there's
Aye.
All right.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I heard somebody chime in. Is that you, Vern, or?
Yeah, that was me. I was trying to stumble around and get my buttons pushed. is it a comment appropriate at this point? It's not an objection, but perhaps a clarification. Is that useful to your discussion?
Oh, sure, Ed, go ahead. We voted on it, but that's all right. It's not,
Yeah, no,
it's
no,
helpful.
that's fine, and maybe that works. The vote that Mr. Gertz reported was correct, but I'm not unhappy with the result moving forward. But just to give you some quick background on that, as you know, there's been discussions back and forth with DEQ in terms of how they handle the analysis of impacts to groundwater. In this specific case, we're in a somewhat unique situation there on the planning and zoning, because you've got 3 credentialed hydrogeologists that are able to look at some of the stuff we get from DEQ with a much more critical eye than has been true in the past. So first point is, I want to make it completely clear, I'm speaking to you at the moment as Planning and Zoning Commission, and we have moved forward only with the unanimous concurrence of Planning and Zoning Commission. So let no one think for a moment this is an issue that's mine alone. And our problem with the DEQ is we sent a letter to them asking them for clarification of their analysis of the impacts of groundwater. They sent us back a response which was completely different than the response that Mr. Schneider reported to us at our meeting in terms of why DEQ was okay with the subdivision. So the flag that I'm waving is we need better alignment between our decisions and the reasons for those decisions. And of course, that runs through a couple of the canceled items on our agenda today. So we at Planning and Zoning are trying to come up with a more precise alignment of why we're making the decisions we're making and how they conform with the rules with respect to impacts to groundwater. Subsequent to that, I had a long conversation with Jennifer Zygmunt, the Water Division Administrator of DEQ, and her assistant, Keenan Hendon, on this point of how they are doing the technical side of their reviews of groundwater impacts. And that ricochets back into that big meeting that you held, Commissioner Gosar, with them, what's it been, 2 months ago. And if you recall, the parking lot, as Ms. Zygmunt referred to it, was full of issues to be decided, and none of that has been acted upon. And of course, everyone has a million things they're doing. So this little discussion of Cottontail is a variation on us, Planning and Zoning, on behalf of the county, trying to get a tighter coordination with DEQ in terms of how they're analyzing and providing advice to us on groundwater impacts. The situation there at Cottontail should have been an easy one because the groundwater out there is very poor quality, and the reason why one should not be concerned, and I think we all agreed on that, about impacts to groundwater, is that no one's using the groundwater, and that's why they're on the city water system in the first place. So our hope was that it would have been an easy opportunity for DEQ to say, this is not an issue. And that's what was communicated us through Mr. Schneider. But on paper, that isn't what they said. So anyway, long way of saying we on Planning and Zoning are trying to more tightly coordinate the technical advice that we as the county are getting from DEQ. So thank you for the opportunity to add that. I hope clarification. Maybe I've just muddied it, but it in fact is a muddy issue.
Thank you, Bert. I appreciate it. Anything else, David? Okay, item 11. Present for consideration Spotted Horse South Subdivision Preliminary and Final Plat Application SD-04-22 and a subdivision permit. David, please.
All right. So this is a subdivision application for Spotted Horse South. Craig Emanuel is the applicant and owner of the property. This application, or this subdivision, will be 6 lots. It's currently rural residential. Lots will be accessed from Moon Dancer Trail by way of Tom Tucker Lane. Number of folks reviewed this application. There's a couple of things that had to be taken care of on the county engineer side, but they were all taken care of, so everything looks good there. Water will be provided by individual wells and sewage by septic systems. Storm drainage report was completed and reviewed by Jake Snyder, county engineer. Utilities, postal service can be provided out in the area. There's one proposed road, Moondancer Trail. This road maintenance will be done. This is within the Hope Springs Community Special Road Improvement District. And all lots will pay into that district. Financial assurance has been provided. And fire protection again provided by the Albany County Fire District number 1. There was a variance request from the right of from basically the 24-foot standard of the road. It's an 18-foot road with 3-foot shoulders. So that was what was approved previously. And this has went through the variance process, been approved by planning and zoning. At the time that the previous subdivision went through the same process, it wasn't necessarily a variance that was needed because the shoulders are still part of that road. And so it does still meet the 24-foot wide. So I would actually suggest that there's no variance needed. However, it's been approved. So I think everything's in compliance. Findings of fact, the summary of subdivision permit requirements, applicant responses, staff analysis of inclusion of required information as referenced in this report are affirmatively adopted as findings that the applicant has provided. The board with adequate information that the requested and required findings of documentation, notice and notification have been satisfied by the applicant and are the same incorporated provisions of law. The applicant is proceeding in accordance with and in compliance with the requirement of Albany County plating and subdivision regulations. Staff analysis. This is kind of an extension of already happened, different landowner, but it extends to the south of existing Spotted Horse subdivision. I think there's a couple of them out there. And so staff recommended approval. Planning and zoning, again, this was another application that discussions came up on water quality and DEQ reports, and they actually had their geologist there that provided some good information, I think, for planning and zoning and helped them feel more comfortable with this application. There was some mistakes along the way too. When this application went out, DEQ reviewed it like it was within the Casper Aquifer Protection area, which it is not. I mean, it's outside of that area. And so they reviewed it first as that. And then once they realized that it's close, but it wasn't in there, they had to re-review it and send a new letter back to us. So that was something that was discussed as well. So there was a vote 4-1 to recommend the Board of County Commissioners approval of the Spotted Horse South subdivision preliminary and final plat application and subdivision permit along with the variance requested, adopted and incorporated staff analysis. Findings of fact and conclusions last stated in the staff report. Commissioner Henning was voted against the motion. And just going back and listening, she didn't really bring up a whole lot of concerns. The only thing she questioned was some of the DEQ information. So I'm guessing that was her reasoning. But anyways, long story short, that's the recommendation. I understand for questions.
Thank you, David. Commissioners, any questions? David? Anybody in the room like to make a comment about the Spotted Horse subdivision? How about online? Is there anybody online who would like to make a comment? I'd entertain a motion for item 11, then, please.
I move that we approve the Spotted Horse South subdivision preliminary final plat application SD 0422. And a subdivision permit incorporating the findings of fact, conclusions of law is outlined in the staff report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Does the motion or Jackie does the motion need to record the variance that's requested? Do we?
I would go ahead and record that because that's how it came out of planning and zoning.
Okay.
So,
But I feel like
I guess I do have a question. Why is there a variance included if there isn't one needed?
the applicant requested it. Like I said, I don't feel like they needed that. However, that's how it came to us, and so it meets our standards, so I think we can approve it with variance or without, honestly.
Ma'am, you're shaking your head. Would you have a comment for us?
My name is Rennie Hornamo, and I'm the owner and developer of Spotted Horse 1 and 2 and project manager for Spotted Horse South. The reason why the variance ever even was considered is there was a misunderstanding. Basically, the county allows for this 18-foot road crown, 3-foot shoulders, and then there's an opposite shoulder as well. The previous county engineer explained at incredible length several years ago the difference between why one road should be wider than the other. So literally it was a misunderstanding. The variance request was put forth as I thought it was going to be required. And then it turned out that 18 plus 3 plus 3 is the 24-foot width. So in fact, we're in compliance without the variance. But because the variance request was put forth in 1 and 2 Spotted Horse acres, then the Spotted Horse South is a direct continuation of Tom Tucker Lane. And the explanation is that if you have an 18-foot road crown, you don't want to suddenly bottleneck it and turn it into a 24-foot when somebody coming the other way is going to drive right off of it. So it didn't ever need to be. I thought I was supposed to have to do this and didn't. And so we just continued it to make it consistent.
Would you feel comfortable with or without it? It's up to you. I mean,
Well, Spotted Horse 1 and 2 was done several years ago. So would there be a misconception going forward as to why was it done and wasn't done here? And now this is, I mean, the simpler the better is the way I feel about the whole thing. So.
yeah.
Well, the reason that I didn't include it in the motion is because I didn't think it was unnecessary, that it was necessary, so.
It isn't.
And as a developer, if in Spotted Horse 1 and 2, if you ended up building the roads wider because you thought you had to, then they actually are required to be. I mean, you don't have to have a drop off neck down. You can make that transition however you want to make it safe. It just has to meet the minimum road standard. So,
Which it does.
so that's why I didn't include it.
Okay, fair enough. If you're fine with us not including it, then the motion would be fine. Okay, Sue, I can't remember if you seconded that.
Yeah.
You did? Okay. Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
All right.
Aye, all those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, and thank you for the information. I don't know, I just want to make sure that if somebody were to look at this, that there's some note on somewhere so that they know that they didn't need to request a variance, right? And that, so that somebody coming in looks at the land, and go, wow, they had a variance in 1 and 2, but they didn't have one in South. What happened there, right?
So if they drive out there, they would get the answer and got their measuring tapes out. I mean, I don't, if somebody just looks at on paper, and I don't know why we required a variance before. I didn't understand it at the time. But I'm gonna guess that the road is gonna be the same width regardless. The variance was really and truly about a misunderstanding about what is road versus shoulder, and whether the total overall width includes shoulder or just the travel surface on the road. So now that that's been sorted out, no one will know when you go drive out there, there will be no difference. The only question is, but anyway, they comply with our regulations, so they comply with our regulations.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say the planning department, I'm trying to save these people, I'm trying to save this commission that opportunity for somebody to say, well, I looked at this and I saw this, and why did you guys do that? Jake, you see your hands up, and then David, I'll come to you. Go ahead, please, Jake.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to kind of clarify, and I think Commissioner Richardson was on the way of getting there. The reason that the previous one required a variance is we have terms in our subdivision regulations that there's road bed, there's traveled way, and shoulders, and there's conflicting information. They're not defined. And so it's based on interpretation of what that means. Bill had an interpretation that the roadbed was the and the traveled lane was the way, or the lane. But in reality, the shoulders and the lane, they're all the same. And so in practice, what's going to be built is going to match out there, and what will be built meets our current subdivision regulations, because the shoulders are built basically the same as the lane. And it's just termed differently in the subdivision regulations without a clear definition of what that means. If that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we put that in our parking lot. Dave?
Yeah, and I'll just actually add to what he said. That's kind of what I was gonna say is the whole reason this came up was how do we interpret what our rules say, and that's what Bill came up with, because there isn't a whole lot of definition in there. But road standards are something we're looking at, so.
Perfect.
It's impossible to tell
so-
where the travel lane
Right.
starts and stops versus the shoulder.
Right.
And if it was compacted properly, the shoulder is the travel lane. And if it's just depending on the material, maybe you get sucked off because, it could be a 5-foot shoulder with a really, in a practical sense, with a really small path to drive on, or it could be depending on the material it's made out of, but you can't visually tell that, right? I mean, you can't. So the problem is that you just have to call it all the road, even though some of it might be more desirable to travel on than others.
On a paved road, it's still paved. The shoulder is still paved.
Right.
It goes,
Yeah.
so.
And on a
It's just
gravel
the
road, the
gravel
shoulder
road
is still
is
gravel.
Yep.
It just might have a different quality.
So anyways.
Yeah, awesome. Did we vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Jake. Really do appreciate it. Item 12, present for consideration Portman subdivision preliminary and final plat application SD-05-22 and a subdivision permit. David, please.
All right, so this is a request from Michael Ruth Portman. They want to split their lot into 2 lots. Number of folks reviewed this. Will be accessed off of Welsh Lane, 6th County Road. Number of folks reviewed this. This is within the 1 mile of the city of Laramie, so they provided comments, which you can read in the back. They recommended approval of it. They just had some kind of planning comments and things in there, so just want to bring that up. Water and sewer are individual wells and septic is what are being proposed. Lot 2 currently has an existing system out there. Storm drainage report was provided and reviewed by Jake Schneider, county engineer. Utilities, postal service can provide service out there. There's no roads proposed with this. No need for financial assurance. Fire protection provided by Albany County Fire District number 1. The summary of the subdivision permit app, or this findings of fact, summary of the subdivision permit app, requirements, applicant's response, and staff analysis of inclusion of required information as referenced in this report are affirmatively adopted as findings that the applicant has provided the board with adequate information that the requested and required findings, documentation, notice, and notations have been satisfied by the applicant and the same are incorporated here. I just want to tell you that I did not write this.
Okay.
Probably someone. It wasn't me. I'm just joking. I mean, not really, because it was the attorneys that wrote it.
Right.
I'm just like, wow, that's a lot. Anyways, conclusions of law, the applicant is proceeding in accordance with and is in compliance with the requirements of the Albany County Planning and Subdivision regulations.
Mocking the attorneys.
No, they're doing it to keep us out of trouble. So I greatly appreciate that. So.
We all do.
Yeah.
Poor David, every time we update one of these, he's like, oh dear. Sorry, David, we're sorry.
Okay, so this is in the already developed area. There's a number of little rural residential lots up there. Meets our standards. Staff recommended approval. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval. Any questions?
Thank you, David. Any questions, commissioners?
So no internal roads because it'll probably access Welsh Lane.
Yeah, they split it in half. And,
Yeah.
All right, I entertain a motion for item 12, please.
I move that we approve the Fortman subdivision preliminary and final plat application SD 0522 and the subdivision permit incorporating the findings of fact and conclusions of law as outlined in the staff report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion online or in person? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, David. No, we still, yes, we got just one more with you, I think. Present for consideration renewal of the 2022 mobile home park licenses for County Country Meadows Estates, Lunatic Place, Coronado Mobile Home Park, Laramie Mobile Home Park, 60 Last Mobile Home Park, Flying X Ranch, A Call Niwas, Troutman Mobile Home Park, and Peterson Mobile Home Park. David.
All right, so this is just our mobile home park renewals for 2022. I'd like to say this is all of them, but it is not. So
Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
And so for those that have not submitted, there'll be another letter going out to them.
yes,
Saying
we
we're
continue to
waiting on
harass
it, or do we
them.
already implement the fee schedule?
They will be required to pay the additional.
Any other questions, Commissioners? I entertain a motion for 13 then.
I move that we approve item 13 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, David. Item 14, present for approval lease agreement between the Albany County Board of Commissioners and the American Legion District Pendleton, Wyoming Post 114 for the Albany County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. Jennifer, would you want to?
Good morning, Commissioners. This item in 14, any item in 15 go together. They are both leases for the building at 112 South Fifth. The county attorney's office pays approximately half of the rent, and crime victim witness pays the other half of the rent. So both of these leases are to continue the lease for the next fiscal year.
Thank you, Jennifer. Commissioners, any questions? You have a question? Oh, okay.
I didn't know.
Yeah, it's,
I didn't mean to do that. I was just like, I don't know.
I entertain a motion for item 14, please.
I move that we approve item 14 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item 15, present for approval lease agreement between the Albany County Board of Commissioners and the American Legion District Pendleton, Wyoming Post 114 for the Albany County Victim Witness Program of the Albany County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. That has been covered. This is just the lease agreement. Any other questions about the lease? About 15, I entertain that motion.
I move that we approve item 15 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. 16 and 17 are removed. 18, present for approval contract between the Board of Commissioners of the County of Albany, Wyoming, and Tracy Young for prevention specialist services to administer the development of a prevention strategic plan and funding and oversight model related to the prevention of the use, misuse, or abuse of tobacco, alcohol, and controlled substances, and activities designed to prevent suicide between July 1, 2022 and June 30th, 2023 in the amount not to exceed $58,500. Bailey, good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. This is our agreement with Tracy Young to help continue the services for our prevention program. We're hoping to hire within this next quarter, but I think it would be a good idea to keep her on at least for this full year to help train whoever we do hire. This is a one-year agreement. If we want to extend her in the second year of the grant, we're more than welcome to, but I did just separate it between years.
Commissioners, any questions?
And if we wanted to move things a little bit faster, we can terminate this mid-year, or. if
Yeah, I mean, you
Tracy
can
do the
terminate.
same.
Depending on who we hire. I think it'd be a good, the community trusts for Tracy Young.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good idea to have her on just even as that like mentor piece while this new person's getting up and running.
And Tracy has been vital in bringing in all these organizations that are trying to do that.
Any other questions? Okay, a motion for item 18, please.
I move that we approve item 18.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Bailey, I'd like to thank you for your work on top of it.
Of course.
Abara too. I know you guys have kept that thing together without a director for some time, so I do appreciate that. It's important. We see the clinic, the ravages of abuse and addiction. Man, I wish we could come up with a solution countywide.
It'd be nice if COPSA was not just about education and prevention, but
Yes.
massively frustrating. You can only buy so many pens and bumper stickers. You know, they're actually, without resources, people don't really have a way to, you know, it's not exactly a wraparound. It annoys me.
But that's not the intention of this funding. The intention of this funding is that promotion of the other services around the community.
Right,
The treatment piece, that's a whole separate ballgame. That's your drug court.
right.
So it.
They do
the
work
more,
together.
yeah, the more I'm in there, there's stages to all this. It really is. And the prevention is just kind of that first piece. And I honestly think it's a piece that needs to be pulling people together, like mental health board.
Yeah.
I can't think right now. Sorry, it's the day after a holiday.
Yeah.
It's a bad time for a meeting. But it's that piece that's pulling things in, and Tracy's doing a good job of that. But it isn't supposed to be the treatment piece. That's
Yeah.
never what it was supposed to be. But there is frustrations with the state about what you're able to spend the funds on. The state realizes that, and they're doing different procedures to go through that. So their biggest thing is evidence-based. If it's federal funds, it has to be evidence-based. If it's not evidence-based, there is a way to go around that. It's just a bigger process. But sometimes it's worth it.
Yeah, and the different types of funding make you have to
There's
do
three
different
different
types of accounting, and I mean, there's all kinds of internal.
Oh yeah, this grant
This
is definitely
so-
not my favorite management wise. And the state's dealing with it the best they can as well, but there's three different pots of federal funding with it. There's three different pots of state funding in it. You know, state funding can only pay for foods, federal can't, like, it's a mess. I mean, it really is. But at least we're getting the funds to, you know, help us do things in our community, and we have to use those funds the best way that we can. And then
Well,
The
we-
coalition is coming together
Yeah.
to see which, all these agencies are communicating again and finding out what services they provide and where are their gaps. And also the services are actually coming from the individual agencies. We get together as a coalition to make sure that we've got all bases covered.
I always thought it was more money probably than than is needed to get everybody together and on the same page. I always wish that some of that could be used, you know, granted out or sent out beyond just, I mean, I'm just wishing here. It is what it is, but it has been a frustration of mine.
Well, and the funds can be used to, you know, we contract with Big Brothers and Sisters for their
Yeah.
mentoring program. So we give them funds to do that for us. The whole point of this coalition is, bring everybody together. What is everybody doing in this community? Why are, you know, what are the resources that COPSA wants to take advantage right now? And let's give some funding to them to help them do those things. VOA, for instance, they wanted to put on the mental health first aid training. COPSA, well, the prevention grant was able to fund that with it because they didn't have the funds to do that. So it's helping pieces of the community. We're just contracting it out. Other counties in the state do a lot more contracting than we do, and I think eventually we may get there. But your position with prevention is never supposed to be the trainer. That's not how this works. You contract out those trainers. They're the ones that are supposed to be herding the cats, for instance, making sure everybody's on the same page, getting people to those COPSA meetings, networking, doing all those pieces. But we do contract out the funds. So, I mean, honestly, the $400,000 goes rather quickly once you hire an actual full-time position. And then you start contracting out those pieces.
And if you only had the prevention specialist being the trainer, we'd be in the situation we're in. As soon as they either leave or they're dismissed, there goes the so-called training expertise.
So maybe the issue that I had is that since we weren't contracting these things out, it was hard to spend the money.
And then as soon as we've been without those full-time positions for September will be a full year, I think. So we have, when you don't have a position, your payroll's your biggest expense.
Right.
It is, it always will be. So when you don't have that payroll on there, it's hard to spend the funds. But Tracy and I did a really good job, and Brady, spending out, you know, what was there. We're still giving some money back, but I mean, we were able to spend quite a bit and in a short amount of time too. But we did. Tracy got on the phone with people. I'm like, okay, I know you need money for mental health first aid. I know Big Brothers needs money for mentoring. Like, let's get that money out there and let them use it.
We weren't building an infrastructure before.
Well, and I do have to, you know, not to say anything about COPSA, I think there's three legs to this, and there's one piece that Heber, I think, is talking about, and that we see in the clinic. I watched 2 people less than 40 years old die of alcohol last year. They are delightful people. They had been subject to the COPSA prevention. They had been through drug court. They just couldn't beat the rascal, right? And if you don't help people, you end up running this circular thing where they, you know, and so.
And unfortunately, this money is just
no,
not for that.
right.
But I mean, that's then what we need to look at as a community. Okay, what can we do? Like, what other grants are out there for things like that?
Right.
And Peggy was, when she was here, she was big on wanting a mental court. And I know it's something that you guys probably still want. The drug court needs to get on its feet. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be another phase into this. And then that is more the treatment. Unfortunately, it's funding.
Right.
There's limits on funding, and it does just kind of.
Well, I always just thought that it was a lot to do that coordination. If the contracting is done properly, you know, in the effort to, you know, it was always a pretty anemic thing. And it was like people didn't understand how to do what they needed to do with the money. And actually, you've been a tremendous help in that way. That's why you're saying what you're saying right there.
Well, and
yeah.
Like, COPSA should have multiple pots of money coming into it. Like, that's ideally what it should be. Now we need to get it back. That's like, it's getting there. I don't think we're quite there yet, but it's getting there. And then, yeah, what are the big things in the community? Okay, what funding should the county be looking at next? That's the thing with our office is people email me real quick. Oh, why don't we apply for this? Okay, well, what's the bottom line of this? Like, has this been a problem in the past? I don't know the history of it. Like, what's going on with that? We need to know like more of the history. What really is the community's focus as a whole? And then, okay, like, is this the best place in COPSA? Yeah, we'll keep it in COPSA. The county gets some money, contracts with COPSA to do it, things like that. But COPSA really should have multiple pots of money. It just doesn't. It just has this one pot of money.
Well,
Which
on
only
the
allows
prevention side,
Yeah.
if they had treatment, you know, coming in one door and, you know, so I think what are the legs of the stool? There's treatment and prevention, which we do well. This money can actually be used for enforcement, right? So you have education. If you split apart prevention into some things, it probably is education, resource coordination, and enforcement, you know, because you have the legal side of it too. And so maybe that ties into the specialty courts. But the treatment is a huge issue because it's expensive.
Yep.
And so probably when we get this sorted out, which you guys are doing very quickly, the next thing to do, you know, within the framework of what you guys have built, the next thing to do would be to get some treatment funds coming in a different door so that we have a way to help someone who comes in. There's multiple doors into the process, but I think not enough help on the treatment side. I think somebody who's really in trouble might even have enough education by experience, right?
One of these people that died at the college degree just could not beat alcoholism. And there was nothing that we could do, right? There's no community resources thing. You can either work with Kristen's group and maybe there's a bed in Cheyenne and maybe there's a bed in Sheridan. But if those aren't true, total editorial statement on my part, but
Well, I was editorializing.
yeah, but I think it's.
I mean, you guys are absolutely right. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate the we have to do with
Yeah.
having health.
Yep, I'll continue to advocate at the WCCA for treatment
Okay.
facilities. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
I think we already voted.
Did we vote?
You did.
All right, didn't mark it. Said voted. Sorry. Thank you. Thanks, Sue. Thanks.
Thank you, Bailey.
Thanks, Bailey. 19, discuss Albany County nonprofit ARPA contested applications. Bailey.
So since, I don't know, we met probably over a month ago, I think, and this was on your agenda last. Since then, you guys have asked questions and I've reached out to those organizations and got responses back and emailed you the responses. At this point, we just need to decide what you guys want to do next. And I'm here to help you in any way I can.
Thank you, Bailey. And so I guess we'll just take them one at a time. How about, let's do that. I see Gail's in the room, so feeding Laramie Valley. Commissioner, any ideas or maybe Gail, why don't you come tell us what, you wrote us something, thank you very much. Maybe just outline it again for us, please, and then we'll take it from there. Good morning.
Certainly, thank you. Good morning, commissioners. Appreciate your time. I tried to, I know I sent you a lot response, but so I was trying to sort out some clarity on a variety of things. Your questions that came back to me were specific to one part of our request, primarily in terms of summer lunch program. And even as we last visited here, the issue with that was that just literally a day before I came and presented and long after we had submitted the original proposal, things had shifted at the federal level, and they were, thanks to a lot of pushback around us requiring everyone to do congregate meals and to not allow people to pick up meals, which is the way this program is designed. And it will go back that way eventually, but sort of pushing them and saying the pandemic isn't over, people are still concerned, people still have issues. So they did then extend that waiver. And since then, and since we all met the last time, we were able to apply for that waiver. We were granted that waiver. The schools applied for those waivers. They were granted those waivers, which means that bottom line is there are a number of different sites providing school lunch for the summer. Typically, when these waivers aren't in place, the schools do not provide that. So short version, after I went through all of that to explain that why the timing was all different, we don't see that as an emergency need for access to food at summer lunch. So we've withdrawn that part of our request, which included trying to set up a new site in West Laramie, all of those things. We expect that's going to come up again, and we're planning now for a couple of years down the road for how can we respond to all of that. So we withdrew that part of our proposal. The other thing is I had a sense that you had some concerns about the second part of our proposal in terms of trying to address the issues for the long term. Like, how do we prevent this from this kind of crisis on a food security scale from happening again in Albany County? We've been working for a long time, Feeding Laramie Valley has, to develop long-term food hub to create a sustainable food system that's not affected by whether or not food can come in and out of the county, but that we can actually provide food for ourselves across the state of Wyoming. And I had a sense that that your grants management office and that you all were concerned that maybe this wasn't the best use or maybe an appropriate use of ARPA funding. As a result, since I got the sense of that, we have since then been applying for federal funding that is very eager to support that kind of project. And in fact, we just a few weeks ago submitted a federal grant for that. Very often we end up, Wyoming is not top of the list for receiving these kinds of grants typically. So we may have to apply for several years in a row to get it, but we've made the start, and we think that eventually we will get federal funding. And we also have some other ways that we're looking at this year of moving forward with that without needing to use ARPA funding to do that. So we have also withdrawn that part of our request.
And that wasn't in your,
Yes, we submitted 3 applications.
but Gail, was that in, I remember reading about the withdrawal as far as the waiver program and all, but withdrawing this hub application. Did you
It
respond to
is,
that as well?
it's at the very end of page 4 of our response.
Okay.
Development fund is the very last item before the end of the document. Development funding for a community food hub to address ARPA goals for funding projects that address prevention and long-term response to health and social issues arising out of the pandemic by contributing essential sustainable food security for Albany County. So we're pursuing federal funding sources as well as city, institutional, and farming ranching collaboration for this project. So that, yes, that is.
Okay, thank you.
That leaves the one section for that we're asking, that we continue to ask for funding reconsideration. And that is a proposal that's requesting $97,961 in urgently needed support for assistance with COVID-19 recovery and response funds in the form of funds to do the following. And these are all, first of all, it's, we are getting ready to purchase wholesale foods that are directly distributed to people living in Albany County experiencing poverty and food insecurity. As I believe that I mentioned when we were last here together, not only are food prices, have they skyrocketed along with fuel prices for people to go and get food, but that donations of food for all of the agencies that provide food, and including Feeding Laramie Valley that provides fresh produce, those donations have dropped precipitously because of inflation and everything else that that we're hearing about that's going on. So we are still spending about $1,500, sometimes more, sometimes a little less every week to get enough supplemental wholesale produce to supplement what we're able to grow in the gardens and what we're able to get from donations. So we're asking for that part of all of this whole request is trying to help us stay on top of what's going on as a result of the pandemic over this year and the next year, while we put into place additional funding and additional expansion of our food production and other grants that we're writing so that we can catch up with that and move forward with it. So we're asking, again, kind of from this emergency perspective, help us stay alive while we do that. So there's that part, the wholesale purchase of food, which is, it's about less than half of what people are actually paying in the grocery store, and it continues to get worse, actually. We're also asking part of that, so that's the primary amount. The funding that you gave us last fall was for the first year and a half of the pandemic. So this is from then through the ARPA funding timeframe that's included. That's $79,500 that we're asking for to help us with that. Then we're also asking for $2,000 in startup healthy foods inventory for the mobile market that we're getting ready to launch this summer, just to help us kind of get that on the road. That healthy food market, mobile market, I can answer more questions about that, but that is designed to serve underserved neighborhoods that are far from grocery stores here in Laramie, and then also to reach underserved rural areas, Centennial, Rock River, Woods Landing, where we can help actually get the market out there. It is a combination of reaching people who are going to be purchasing with SNAP, who are, and those kinds of things, but also this is the beginning of us creating a sustainable part of that sustainability, because it's for everyone to shop at. So sliding scale, receiving SNAP is going to be covered by people who can go in and just purchase food. from the market. So we're beginning to combine that. And then we're asking for $12,869 in food distribution supplies. These are the storage bags and containers. It's also an upright cooler that we need for the mobile market. We have horizontal ones. We need one of those. It gives us a generator for the mobile food market and some outreach materials. So that's all mobile market stuff. We also, in spite of the fact that we now have many summer food programs across the Laramie, which is great. And Feeding Laramie Valley is in the middle of a massive construction zone. We are still getting over 125 people every day coming to pick up meals. It's like, so to me, that's another way of saying this is how great the need is. People are they'll do anything to get to us to pick up. And that's just the meals, not to mention the nearly now 600 people every week are coming to pick up fresh produce. So those numbers continue to grow. The need continues to grow. So in addition to that, we need an additional vertical refrigeration unit. So $3,347 of that is for storage in between those days when people are coming to get food. And then finally, we're asking for $10,614 in food production supplies for the expansion of our 5 food production sites. And we've got an amazing team. Fortunately, we were able to get an NCCC team in this summer. That's 10 people for 3 months to assist our food production team in expanding how much we grow and what we grow and all that. So that's been a great help. So all of that, again, adds up to, we're asking for reconsideration of the one component of the 3 that we originally asked for, to the tune of $97,961, which will be used from last November through the end of the ARPA funding time qualification.
Thank you, Gail. Any questions, Commissioners? Okay, should we do this one at a time, Bailey? Is that how you'd like?
We can do it however you guys would like to do it.
Let's do this one at a time, or do you want to hear them all, Commissioners? I guess.
Oh, you mean each entity?
Yeah.
One at a time.
Okay, and then do a motion and do the approval, or, yeah, okay. I entertain a motion for Feeding Laramie Valley's request, reconsideration.
I move that we approve the request for $97,961 to complete this application for basically food support.
For a second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. But carries. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. I
Appreciate it.
greatly appreciate your time.
You bet. Next up, we got Kristen. We have you online. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate it as well. Thank you for your time this morning. Just want to make this quick. I responded to your questions. I'm happy to answer additional ones. Again, we were requesting $180,000 to help support homeless individuals with mental health. This would not be for veterans because we can refer our veterans into our veterans homeless program so they can get support that way. So this would be for other clients with mental health that would need that support and being able to, again, invest in themselves. So I talk oftentimes about we invest in our clients and we ask them to invest back in themselves. So in order to be in this program, clients would have to be actively engaged in their programming. Otherwise, we would move them out of the program because our ultimate goal is to get them in sustainable housing for them to have. And I welcome any questions that you have.
Commissioners, any questions?
Kristen addressed the questions I submitted.
Okay. And just to be, so everybody's listening who didn't have the opportunity to read your answers, Kristen, this is the transition time between a person joining, working with BOA or Interfaith, and then finding sustainable housing. So a couple of months, maybe 3. Is that what I understand?
Yes, that's our hopeful intent with it. Again, with them being actively engaged. I could see there maybe having to be some rare occasions where they need a little bit longer than that, but the goal of the program would be for them to be very actively engaged with their case management and therapy services, skills training, and also with interfaith to get them into that housing.
Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
And then along the line, you'd be working with ERAP.
Yes.
On those people, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Okay.
Absolutely. And lots of other community partners and resources, whatever's needed for that individual client, we would customize that and individualize it for them to ensure that they have that community wraparound support.
Thank you. Entertain a motion then if there are no further questions for VOA.
I move that we approve the request for 180,000 to VOA for this temporary housing program.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Kristen, for the work you guys do. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. I appreciate it very much.
You have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
And the last one would be Cathedral Home for Children. I don't seem like anybody is here or online. Commissioners, any thoughts about that? I guess my first question, Bailey, I'm sure you guys reached out to Cathedral Home for Children, and did they have any I mean, they sent us responses, but
They didn't have anything else to add, really. I mean, the one thing that's made me nervous is all their financials. I personally feel like it's a lot of money for the number of people that it would help. And just, when you give interfaith 100,000, it goes a long way in interfaith. So that was my biggest concern. Also, just some of the conversations I've had, maybe I just don't understand their structure there and their relationship with DFS. But they have said things to me in the past that DFS sets rates. So I think that may be part of my confusion too. I've tried to learn it. I still don't understand it. But those were my biggest concerns. It's quite a bit of money that they're asking for. Where is it other organizations, it goes a lot further.
Greg, I have a question. The counseling services, is that being requested anew again, or is that something that we already did?
You guys we did move forward with the counseling services. So we funded that. We have not sent them anything yet. We were waiting for decisions on the rest of it first. But that piece is already funded. It's just the other piece. Thank you.
Any thoughts about Cathedral? One way or the other, is there an amount that is? I'll just have you know, I reached out to Jeremiah at the Wyoming County Commissioners Association to try to understand the conversation around DFS and DFS reducing the daily rate on food and services at Cathedral Home. I've yet to receive a response about why that was happening in the middle of the pandemic. But there you go. It has happened, so I haven't heard a response about why that's happening.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, for Cathedral Home, the why doesn't change the reality on the ground. I struggle to understand it as well. And it bothers me a little bit that no one's here to represent, because that would help us.
What we can do is, we can push this to your next meeting in July if you'd like. I did let everybody know that you guys were meeting on this today. But if you would like to talk to them more about it, we certainly can.
If they would like to talk to us, I would appreciate that.
I have some concerns that echo Bailey's comments and all, and see if maybe there's somewhere we could make a compromise.
Yeah.
Because it is a lot of money, so very few.
Yeah, maybe I can get Jeremiah to comment on what the state proposes with their opera funding, if they're going to backfill DFS or not, or they have much more sense than over Cheyenne than I do.
Well, and it would just seem a little weird that, so they said DFS sets their amounts, And I was like, okay, then I feel like this is a problem with DFS. Kind of, you know, when VOA put in the Title 25 stuff in their application. And I said, no, this is a completely separate issue. You need to work with the commissioners on that project. I feel like that's kind of what we're doing here. But we can certainly move them back to the 19th. I'll make that up.
Maybe there's a moment. Thank you. And I think that takes care of that group, right?
Hospice.
Hospice. Oh, excuse me. So hospice.
And hospice is looking for basically supplies, medication, oxygen, cleaning.
Yeah, on the spreadsheet she sent me, she did do a little before what ARPA is eligible for. So we would have to adjust some of those numbers. Just so you know, I already told her about it. She is aware of that. She said they're running the spreadsheets again. No big deal.
Okay.
But
Do we have an amount?
I don't have a total amount.
It's 70,958.
And it may be a little less than that, just because she did have those.
Okay, so we can approve up to 70,000.
We can do that.
Okay, is that your motion?
Well, let's see. So we did this by individual motion on feeding Laramie Valley, and then we sort of like went out through the whole group.
No, I thought
No,
we did.
we did each.
We did VOA.
We've
Okay,
done
so-
separate motions.
So right now we're at,
Hospice.
Awesome.
Cathedral Home, we're doing.
oh, because we didn't, okay, so that transition, I got you,
Yeah.
okay.
So we're at hospice, and it's Sue's number is 7,958. It's a change, and we're thinking that is the upper limit of what her spreadsheet may be, but
We can do that. You can do approve not to exceed the 798 or 958. And then once we take out those numbers,
yeah.
we'll get a more realistic number for you.
Okay. Are you guys comfortable with that? Because I am. Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we award up to and not to exceed $70,958 to Hospice of Laramie from ARPA funds.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, and that covers everything.
Yep, that should be it.
All right.
Betty, thank you for
Thanks,
facilitating all the back and forth
You're welcome.
questions.
All right, item 20, present for approval estimate from Tiger Tree in the amount of $9,700 to remove dying cottonwoods in the courthouse grounds. Cutting this house. Roy, good morning.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, this is a annual thing we do at Tiger Tree to look over any trees that might be sick and dying and in need of removal. We have two this year. One last year, I believe. One of them will be on Fifth Street, one on Sixth Street. Can't help another guy. Avoid any accidents or something.
Commissioners, any questions? Any motions?
I move that we approve item 20 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Hey, where do we, does this come out of your budget or where, how does this get paid?
There's a separate fund, isn't there, Jackie?
Oh, it's the building fund.
No, it's not in the
It's-
building.
I think it's in your budget, Roy.
Is
Let me
it?
double check.
Yeah, it is, it's in the budget, but it's a separate line item.
Gotcha.
Besides the building.
I didn't know, I can't remember. There's lots of line items in the budget, but I was trying to remember if we specifically set aside for money for this.
Yeah,
If we wind up sort of, you know.
And we also have an estimate on replacing some trees. That has nothing to do with this, but in the lawn out here, we're not losing anything on Grand yet, but when we do, it's gonna look pretty stark. I'd like to do that this fall, and I'll get you an updated estimate. I got an estimate right now of, I think it's like, what is that? 6,820, and it's about like 14 different trees. But I want to make sure we cover these ones that we're losing too, maybe not with cottonwoods, or they said there's some other cottonwoods that are longer life and healthier cottonwoods if you want to choose to do that. So I'll get some numbers for you on what we want to do with those. But because we've lost a few, I think it'd be nice to maybe add a couple there, plus the stuff that we're gonna put inside the lawn later on. But fall is the best time. We're past the spring to plant a tree, and right now it's too hard on them. It's stressful, and especially with the heat coming up. So fall would be our best chance for next spring.
Right, can you get a decent sized cottonwood? I mean, not starting from just teeny little sapling. Obviously, it's not gonna be anything the size of this.
Right.
But
I'm not sure how big we could get them. There's one that, what is this, 15 gallon on the maples that I had requested for inside the lawn. Those are 15 gallon. So they're probably not gonna be, but maybe this size on those trees. And I'm not sure what the cottonwoods, how big the cottonwood is. But he did say there's several different kinds, and there's different kinds right here. I thought these were all the same, but the healthier ones that we see over here are a different cottonwood than we had right over here.
I actually, you know, when water wasn't so much of an issue, you know, as far as cost and you know, we're in sort of more, cottonwoods are thirsty trees, and they grow fast. And I'm going to guess that that's why, you know, if you settle on the plains and you want to be protected from the winter wind and just all of that, plant a fast growing tree that makes shade. But I don't, so we sort of like cottonwoods, you know, that we're sentimental about them, but I think we ought to expand our search or our decision making to trees that are hardier, last longer, use less water. Maybe even if they grow slower, if they're, you know, more dense, more tough, a little bit harder wood. You know,
I agree with you. To conserve on anything at all is good, I think. So I agree with that. Do we really want to replace them with the thirsty tree? The thing that's good about these cottonwoods that we have around here, their root system is so established. I don't water them. The broadways I water once in a while, but it's really hard to keep anything alive on them because the constant walking on the grass. You're never going to grow grass on those broadways. But those trees, they get whatever little water I give them, but they're already down, established. Wherever they get their water from is not from, unless they've got roots coming down underneath the side, and they do, because they lifted up the sidewalk out in different areas, but they're pretty much on their own.
Well, and that's the other
a lot of
thing.
water on them.
When you look at a tree, what you see above the ground is equal to what's below the ground. Maybe not the same shape, but cottonwoods are destructive because they tend to go, you know, tear up infrastructure. And so I was researching trees for my own yard, and I learned a ton of stuff like that I maybe never wanted to know. But there are trees that have smaller root balls. You know, like in the septic business, there are trees that go find that water, and there are trees and ruin the septic, and there are trees that kind of stay where they are. It took me a lot of years in that business but you know, infrastructure is expensive, curb, gutter, and street. So I don't know. I would want to use a whole different decision matrix without advocating for a specific path, or, you know, just if I was going to be in charge of that, what we choose to replace, you know, when there's climate and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of
water, but I don't know what it's going to cost us to do the sidewalk out on here on Grand. I mean, I got areas right now that are lifting up this high, and that's past ADA compliant. And so those are cottonwood roots that are doing that, you know. And so do we want to put something in that's going to use more water? This is all something to think about, and tear up your sidewalks as well.
So we do need to start on that, so that, because, you know, cottonwoods look cool on the outside, but they get pithy on the inside, and sometimes they're dangerous and you can't tell.
Yeah.
But I'm going to guess that a bunch of these are getting to the end of their life cycle.
There's a couple out here that scare me because it breaks off every time we have a windstorm. I got stuff in the yard, and we did have one a couple of years ago that was this big around that came, and it was a long, and if I would have been running my four-wheeler there, and it would kill you. It'd kill you if you were hit by that tree. It was still green, but it was pithy inside, but it was heavy. We already got it over the thing to cut it with the chainsaw, but it was, and I've had bigger ones, bigger branches that maybe wouldn't kill you, but it sure put you in the hospital. And that tree does it every time, but it's just, it looks pretty healthy though. Right now.
Is that one of those that Tiger Tree would deal with?
They said they didn't need any trimming on it right now, and they'll trim the ones that they need to trim, but these are the only two that, I think are only sand removal. We don't have, they said they might do some trimming on a little bit on here, but the rest of it they thought looked pretty good.
So this is just to clean up and maintain.
Yep, and keep people from suing us. Well, you know, we had one that went out on Grand one time, and the person, yeah, and for our insurance, I believe they suggested that we do this annual assessment on our trees, and, you know, keep an eye on them, do the best we can. I mean, you never know what's inside it too. I mean, they're experts, and they might not get it completely right either, you know, but at least we're trying.
Mr. Chairman, there are funds available in Roy's building maintenance, but not at the tune of $9,700. So thank you for asking the question, because it would be my recommendation to pay it out of 1% miscellaneous uncommitted, and in the future add a line item for the tree trimming or cutting for future consideration.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Jackie. Did we vote on this? We had a first.
No, just.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Roy. Appreciate it. Item 21, award bid in response to the request for proposal for purchase of magnesium chloride and holding tank delivered to Laramie, Wyoming to Desert Mountain Corporation. Rob, good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. If you recall, we put this out for bid in late May, and we didn't get any bidders. This time, we widened our scope a little bit, time-wise. Desert Mountain did place a bid. Their bid price was $196.89 per ton to deliver 90 tons, which came to a total of $17,720.10. Also included in that is one 21,000 gallon storage tank to be loaned to Albany County at a one-time mobilization charge of $600. I think this is probably as good as we're going to be able to do right now. I did compare their bid to Laramie that they did. I think it was in April. This one's a little higher, but a lot of that is due to, I think, the price of fuel changed dramatically too in the last 2 months. So reminder to myself to do this earlier.
Commissioners, any questions for Rob? Can we use county road fund money to?
Yes.
To council? Super. I'd entertain a motion for item 21, please.
I move that we award the bid in response to the request proposal for purchase of magnesium chloride and holding tank delivered to Laramie, Wyoming to Desert Mountain Corporation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
So we resolved we pick round numbers, but when you go hauling something, we resolved all the partial truckloads, and I actually thought maybe we were going to buy a tank.
That's
based on the
something
way I read it.
we're looking at. This was, I had visited with the city and stuff, and they went this route to get started to see what, to kind of get a feel of how much mag they were going to use per year and that kind of thing. For example, in our first bid, we had tons. And this one, they were able to, because of what they'll haul in their trucks is 90 tons.
Right.
You know, so it's not quite as much as we asked for the first time, but this will be a good enough, example of what we can use this year and get a good feel of what we need. And we may feel like we need more as the years go on. We may feel like we're not using this much. So right now, Curtis and Welsh are two of our biggest roads that are dust issues. You know, a lot of traffic on them. They generate a lot of dust, especially on those evenings when the wind's not blowing. It just kind of hangs there and stuff.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item 22. Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate it. Present for approval contract between the Board of Commissioners of the County of Albany, Wyoming, and Desert Mountain Corporation for purchase and delivery of magnesium chloride and lease of a storage tank. Any other questions about the lease?
That's just the contract for it.
I entertain a motion for 22 then, please.
I move that we approve item 22 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I just have one question, and that is why, I understand why lease a tank. I'm not sure I understand why buy a tank.
And maybe that's something, I mean, right now, it looked like in this deal, they weren't charging us a fee on the tank. They were charging us $600 to mow a year.
Right.
So, you know, as long as we're using them next year.
Well, right,
And it saves us for maintenance and
yeah,
replacement and all of those things.
if the valve leaks or something, they gotta fix it, not us.
Right, exactly.
Or their tank, you know, is that a lined steel tank or is it, because salt is nasty?
I'm not sure. It's
Or
something
plastic.
it's something that, you know, that they use.
Tanks are expensive. We buy lots of them and they're a pain. And the sun's hard on them and all kinds of stuff. So like that wasn't part of this discussion, but it made me think.
Right. But
if we can lease a tank and have it belong to somebody else, we should do that as long as we can.
And we're also in shop, we're gonna have to redesign some of our water trucks to maybe put this out and stuff, to get it lower to the ground so the wind's not, you know, blowing in the waste. Those are things we could do in-house. So we have some pretty good guys that fabricate, so.
Build or buy a spray bar and just have
Well, that's what we're looking at.
some cam lock connectors or whatever, and just hang it on there, and because you gotta use the water trucks to spray water too.
Right, yeah.
The application process is completely different.
Yeah, because we want to get it in the smaller, the water truck, you can spray it in a pretty big swath, where here, the swath's gonna have to be more straighter and kind of like irrigation, you know, the sprinkler systems where you see out there where they, you know, just spraying in little sections.
I suppose you have to be able to apply it evenly, or you.
Right, yeah.
Or you'd have road performance issues and.
Otherwise,
wasted or.
right now, if we were to spray it out like we do with our water, you're gonna get a high concentration right here and not enough out here. So that's why we make it hard. Probably be doing it deep for the sauce. I know we have the guys at the shop that can fabricate that kind of stuff. So.
Good, who's good, Judd?
I don't know if we made a motion on that.
We did.
And vote on it?
We haven't.
Okay. So moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign.
Thanks.
That motion carries. See you, Rob. Thank you. Item 23, approve vouchers for July 2022.
I move that we approve the vouchers for July 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And seeing no more business before the Albany County Commission on July 5th, 2022. I move to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Goodbye.